All right, my friends, welcome back. This is going to be part 15. Part 15 of my presentation on the flood and Noah's Ark. And if you'll notice on the screen here, we've been going through, or we just started the three theories on how fossil trees, and not only fossil trees, but there's also animals that have been found in Antarctica. How did they get there? How did they get there? Now, you could also throw this into the North Pole also, but we're mainly talking about the South Pole. But again, you could throw this into the North Pole as well. But they have found things in Antarctica and at the North and South Poles, things that doesn't grow there today. It's impossible for it to grow there today. Impossible for certain animals to even live in these locations that have been found in these areas. And we're going to talk about some of the things that they found later on in the presentation, detailing exactly what they found in Antarctica that just makes scientists scratch their head and going, what in the world was it like in the past? But these are the three main theories. The continent has not always been at that location that it is now. Talk about Antarctica. The trees grew there when the climate was much warmer, and the trees were transported at the location during the biblical flood. That's the three top theories that we're going to be looking at. That's going to take several videos to cover. So now we're still in one. We're still in the first theory. And if you'll remember, in our last video, I showed you this picture right here, how one of the things that they use as evidence for there being what they call a supercontinent was that Europe and Africa match closely with North and South America. And so that's one of the edges. If you'll look, they call it the jigsaw puzzle. The jigsaw puzzle. Now, the continental fragments that's left from this supposed supercontinent, they call them cratons. They call them cratons. That's what they call that. Now, if you'll notice, running right through that jigsaw puzzle is called the mid-oceanic ridge. And I'm going to touch base on that in this video here. I'm just going to touch base on it, but you're going to see this again even after this presentation. Now, one of the theories about this, when did this supposed supercontinent happen, or when did the Earth split apart? They're saying one theory is that it happened during the days of Peleg. If you'll notice in Genesis 10:25, it says, "And unto Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg. For in his days," that's Peleg's days, "was the earth divided. And his brother's name was Joktan." Now, it is also mentioned in First Chronicles 1:19. "And unto Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, because in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan." Now, when you look into the concordance on Peleg and define it, his name means division. It means division. Now, this picture right here is from Adam's chronological chart map of history. I have this thing, great big huge chart, gigantic chart. Those of you that have seen my presentation on dinosaurs and man, I showed you that thing way back during the beginning of that presentation. But it says here in Genesis 7:11, "In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were open." Now, this is the evidence that I'm going to show you that this dividing of the earth, this actual physical, geological dividing of the earth did not happen during the days of Peleg. One reason is because if you'll notice, go over to, you'll see right there where it says the deluge. If you look at the picture, it's going to be towards the left-hand side, left-hand top side. It says the deluge, and it says Noah's deluge. Now, when you hear of deluge, you're talking about the flood. That's what they're talking about. But you'll notice there that red line going straight down. That is when the flood happened. And then you got everybody else that was born after that. So when was Peleg born? Peleg was born way much after after the flood, and you'll see that little red dot there. And so right there is when he was born, and so that does not match up to the fountains of the great deep breaking up and what they would consider the earth dividing. Now, if you remember the map of Pangea. What the creation scientists are saying is that Pangea was all underwater. It never came above water, and that specific stage in the earth, the landmass, was only there for a couple weeks. And then it started splitting apart into the continents that we have today. And so, but the fountains of the great deep is where most of the water came from that flooded this planet. That's where it came from. It came from underneath the earth. And that's where you get the mid-oceanic ridge. If you'll notice here, this is a picture of the mid-oceanic ridge, and it's a split. It goes all over the entire planet. It was discovered in the 1950s, and I'm just going to briefly touch on this, guys, because we're going to hit this again later on, much later in the presentation. But it was discovered in the 1950s, and it wraps around the earth with a length of 40 to 46,000 miles. And so that's how long it is, 40 to 46,000 miles long. And when we're talking about plates, the plates of the earth, there are 7 major plates covering 95% of the Earth's surface and 10 minor plates. The Pacific plate is the largest, covering 39.8 million square miles. Now, when you have this mid-oceanic ridge, when the Earth split open and that water came from underneath, it is theorized that is what formed the major mountain ranges. And I'm going to show you some evidence that supports that. But when the water came up from the earth, it bulged. The underlying earth came up, it bulged up and caused the continents to slide away from it because of the underlying water that was underneath the crust. So what you would have here, I've got Kiki on my lap here. She walked up to me. She wanted to sit with me, and so I got her here with me, and so she's distracting me a little bit. But what you have is when you got that, when the fountains of the great deep burst and it came up, well, that underlying the earth came up, and that split, causing the continent, the earth to slide away from it. And so it slid away from it, and then when it had resistance, if you'll notice on the screen here, when it had resistance, it caused the mountains to form. They buckled. That's when they buckled, and you can clearly see this in some mountain pictures here. Here's a picture of this. Now you can see this. It's clearly evident. Look at that. Look at the waves in this mountain. This mountain has buckled. As it's buckled. There's no way you're going to get this type of formation with dry dirt or rocks. They're going to break. They're going to split. That's not going to happen. Now, this was near the Sullivan River in southern British Columbia in Canada. Look at that mountain ranges, guys. You can clearly see that these mountains were, well, the earth was moving, and when it found resistance, it buckled. It just compressed together, and then the land masses started growing up. And so now here is another picture of the mountain ranges and the mid-oceanic ridge. Now you can see look where the blue is, and you can see the mid-oceanic ridge, that darker blue gray picture. That is the mid-oceanic ridge. It wraps all around the planet, And so now the mountain ranges run parallel to these mid-oceanic ridges. I numbered them there. If you'll notice on the bottom, you got the Rocky Mountains, the Appalachian Mountains, the Andes Mountains, and then you got the Himalayas. Now that ring of fire there, we're going to touch on that later. And so, but you got the ring of fire. I'll explain to that later, but for just time's sake, we're just going to stay on what we're talking about now, but that will be talked about later. Now the Himalayas is 1,500 miles long. That's how long it is. And you got the area that it's in there. And notice the Yeti sightings. Believe it or not, we are going to rabbit trail on that later on. We're going to touch on that topic. I just couldn't resist it. And so we will talk on that later. But the Himalayas, secular and creation scientists both agree that the Himalayas were once at the bottom of the sea and were created by powerful earth movements. One believes this happened over 30 to 50 million years ago, and the other at or around the time of the biblical flood, which is about 4,400 years ago. Measures indicate that the Himalayas are still rising. They're still rising. Mount Everest in 1999 was found to be 6 feet higher. It appears that Mount Everest is rising a few millimeters each year due to geological forces. Marine fossils have been found at the tops of the mountains. And so there is your evidence that these mountains, they weren't always there. And it had to have happened during that catastrophic event of the flood where the fountains of the great deep broke open and the earth slid away from these bulging of the earth coming up. And so now, there's one thing we need to realize. If that's not the case, if the earth didn't split apart or divide physically, geologically, during the days of Peleg, what is it talking about? Now, you got to think here. Think about it now. You just don't move a continent. You just don't move this planet just so easily. If there were a separating of continents after the flood, it would again have a catastrophic result that would destroy everything on the planet. Another flood. This would go against God's covenant of Genesis 9:18, 8 through 17, where he said that he would never destroy the planet with the flood again. Now, this is where I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop right here. But when we come back, we're going to find out, what is he talking about? What is going on in the days of Peleg where the earth was divided? We're going to talk about that, and I'm going to show you right from the scripture what exactly is going on. And so it's very interesting, so you guys be sure to be back during this. But guys, we're going to stop there, and I got about 14 minutes, almost 14 minutes into this, and so where I'm at right now. But we're going to come back to it. Next video, I don't know if it'll be as long as this one. I never can tell, but I try to keep them somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes. I really don't want to go over that. And I want to keep everything as bite-sized as possible. But we're going to come back, and we're going to look at the days of Peleg and what was going on. But you guys take care. I love you, and I hope the Lord blesses you real good. Bye-bye.